So, hi everyone. My name is Ravi. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Zeeve. And today on Web3 Voice, we have a very exciting guest, Maryam Ayati. And Maryam is the co-founder and president of Watr Protocol, a very innovative, a very much needed Web3 platform solving real enterprise need. So, and we'll deep dive into what Watr is building and how it is going to revolutionize the commodities market. So first of all, I would like to welcome Mariam. Hi, Mariam, and to start with, we would love to have you introduce yourself at the same time. Tell us about your Web3 journey, how moving from enterprise space to Web3 and getting into building Water Protocol.
Well, Dr. Ravi and everyone from the Zeeve community, thank you so much for having me here. I'm based in California, so it's almost properly morning for me, 6 a.m., and I'm really enjoying my cup of coffee to start the day off with everyone here. Um, I have to also mention that you know, all of these journeys, they start with having the key partners and enabling relationships in place. And as many of you know, Zeeve has been and will continue to be a core partner for us at the L1 at Watr as our, the Avalanche and Avalabs team and many of our other co-founding partners in enterprise and tech. So it's really exciting for me to be having this conversation because without all of you, so much of what we're trying to do would be incredibly more complicated, slow, and less rapidly deployable. Talking about journey to here and how we ended up really thinking about Watr as as a necessary missing layer one infrastructure to enable commodity flows. I invariably go back to a day in 2016 when many of my friends and colleagues from the commodity trading world at the time, I ran Shell Trading's global origination and investments practice, which looked after all of our physical commodity deals and flows that were cross commodity and global across geography. And that really put me in this incredible vantage point of being able to see and participate in the world's largest flows of physical oil products, carbon, etc. And so on that day in 2016, my many of my peers from all the other industry from it was BP was there, Total was there, Chevron, and many of the trading houses and many of the world's largest banks. We had met in Geneva for what was a world first gathering of most of the world's crude market to talk about how might we, within all of the considerations for competition law and regulatory rigor, how might we innovate within our industry and leverage all of the latest technology to eliminate some of the friction of being paper based, etc. And that gave birth to what then became a holding company that all of us and many others contributed to. I had the privilege of being elected chair by my industry peers. And that holding company really, pioneered enterprise blockchains back in 2016. And we co invested in a series of digital ventures that we believed the industry needed to transition from its more paper waste, it is wasteful, paper based, slow, prone to fraud and mistake and human error, and transition to a future that was fully digitized because all of us knew and deeply understood that silos don't work in an industry that connects the world's resources with the world's demand. That gave birth to many of the world's first enterprise blockchains, and I had the privilege of being part of those as an investor, as a board member, and ultimately with Shell as a customer. But what we could never really do collectively, up to 2020 when I decided to leave Shell, um, was we could never get to trade execution on chain. We could never address the the collective KYC and identity dilemma that we had bridging off-chain creditworthiness, KYC, AML with on-chain practices at a level that allowed us to really get rid of some of the friction that exists in today's traded world off-chain, and we couldn't get past how do you bridge this massive trade finance gap that really exists because financiers are fleeing commodity markets. The gap's about $3 trillion today. They're fleeing commodity markets because of so much of this risk. And most of it is I don't know who I'm doing business with. I don't know if that person is on a sanctions list. I don't know if I'm buying what I'm buying is sanctions goods, etc. And finally, because all of the projects we were building were wonderful, we were reaching close to, majority market share in some of the world's largest markets, but they weren't connected because we didn't have a layer one that really was built for commodity markets, for their trade, for their financing, and for their connected identity needs. And that's really the origin story of Water, was understanding those, understanding that the market didn't provide them, and the need to have a layer one base infrastructure that all of these commodity applications could be built on while remaining connected, compliant, and bringing the financing and liquidity and the innovation of crypto into commodities.
Got it. No, I think that's a very wonderful story, and especially very, very focused on the problem statement and seeing, how the problem can be solved using some of the emerging technologies, whether it be blockchain, and then using some of the components of blockchain tech. So, just to dig deeper into the problem today, which is there in the commodities market. As you rightly said, it's a massive market when we talk about metals or minerals, agri-produce, and as well as oil. We are talking about a massive market, right? And at the same time, you mentioned some of the challenges which are there, whether it be challenges of liquidity, where commodity finance or trade finance is still limited and restricts the growth. And at the same time, there is opacity as far as systems are concerned. There are very complex regulations and compliances that again stifle growth and innovation within this commodity market. And as we know, in the last 30, 40 years, with so much of globalization, commodities have become not just massive, but at the same time, highly critical for any country to survive. Um, so, with all these problem statements, how you planned on using blockchain and various components to solve the challenges that we are seeing in the commodity market today?
That's a wonderful question and a very big one. So I'm going to try to keep my reply short, but let's dig into any aspects that are of particular interest. I want to touch on scale. Scale is, we talk about real world assets, we talk about digital assets growing up and being really a core pillar of the financial system. And I'm seeing so much great work being done in the financial space. What we're not really seeing outside of the work we're doing and outside of the work some of the enterprise partners are doing is expanding this digital asset infrastructure, the capabilities of blockchain and the core functionalities of decentralized finance and its liquidity into physical flows. The physical flows, as you rightly mentioned, of agriculture that feed the world, of metals that really built and power the world's mobility, architecture, all of our infrastructure, and the fuel that turns our lights on, moves our cars and engines, etc. That ability, that scale, and I just want to put some dimensions on the table for everyone to really think about it. The digital assets market, the crypto market, at its peak is about $4 trillion on a really good day. Um, Physical oil alone, physical oil, traded oil in a given year is 3 trillion. The financial trade of that same oil in a given year is closer to 113 trillion. Now, the financialization of oil and oil products, which is even bigger, and gas and copper and all of the other physical attributes we think of physical assets we think of when we think about commodity markets, has that huge leap between 3 trillion to 113 trillion to go. And we really see blockchain, crypto, and cryptography being a core enabler of how we allow that expansion. So for us, it's really about expansion and bringing in liquidity in digital assets that is looking for a more more practical, more essential, more value adding deployment into the real world economy. Second, for builders in the world of crypto and digital assets to be able to do more than participate in the financial infrastructure of the world, but to participate in the resource and physical infrastructure that powers our world. Everyone's talking about AI and compute and how much energy it needs. Well, all of that energy requires also raw materials such as copper, lithium ion, crude oil, natural gas, because that's where our energy comes from. So when we're going back to thinking about need and demand, those basic raw materials of prosperity is where we'd like to attract the builders and the liquidity of crypto and digital assets to. And as I mentioned earlier, then you need an app store, a hub for these things to work. And we streamline all of the compliance and regulatory and privacy needs of enterprise, specifically in the physical commodity space, on Water, so builders can get to the important work of building and innovating, and financiers can get to the important work of providing funding and participating in those upsides.
Got it. No, I think that makes it very, very clear. And it also showcase the importance of a platform or the protocol like Water. Uh,
Right?
so, so as we understand, from a technology standpoint, one, there is the underlying decentralized network infrastructure for which uh, you selected Avalanche L1 as the stack to power the decentralized network. And on top of it, you have designed very critical components like this Water ID, which is a decentralized identity, and then Watermark, and then you have Neo Reserve for provenance. And then at the same time, when we talk about commodities, we are talking about enterprises, large government organizations. So privacy, compliances, risk management, etc., becomes super, super important. So I understand it's a massive collection of different tech pieces or components to bring them together to serve this. So starting with the choice of Avalanche L1 as the stack, um, what were the areas that, why you chose Avalanche L1, whether it be security, compliances, throughput, um, or sovereignty? What were your motivations to go with L1?
Well, as anyone who's followed our journey from our origin will know, we have we have been working toward and looking toward finding the right core infrastructure partner that allows us the scalability, the speed, and the performance we need to bring the world's largest physical commodities on chain. So the table stakes are an infrastructure stack where we're not worried about things like decentralization. Is it decentralized enough? Are we going to have issues with it having downtime? Can it actually scale to where it does give us those instant settlements that we need as the market starts to bring more and more physical commodities that are bigger than the crypto market is today? And Avalanche was a hands down yes. We went through quite a detailed RFP process, request for proposal, for those of you who aren't from my world, and we we spoke to every major infrastructure provider out there, and Avalanche was really the only one that fit the bill, while being able to give us the sovereignty we require, because our customers and partners have very, very different needs and requirements than, for example, the financial market would, or the gaming market would. So that sovereignty aspect of the subnets and L1s was really important. But I think the thing that really, really made it a no-brainer for me and our industry partners was the team at Avalabs. People like Emin Gunsirer and John Nahas and everyone who supports them and builds this community, because not only did they deeply understand what we are doing and the dilemmas where we're trying to turn into opportunities, but they really were some of the, in my mind, some of the sharpest people we met in this industry. And every time you do a partnership, you're partnering with people just as much as you're partnering with the tech. And us, our enterprise partners, and our board was really excited about what we could do with the Avalabs team alongside us and the Avalanche tech uh, powering everything we do.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. I think Avalanche is a great stack, and as you rightly said, they have an amazing team, um, very professional, very professionally managed organizations, and at the same time, very robust ecosystem and massive ecosystem support they provide to all the builders. And in terms of tech, I think the subnets in new Avatar L1 is allows you to launch your permissionless chain. You can extend your validator set, make it more and more decentralized. And at the same time, um, uh, critical stakeholders can join the chain, high throughput, privacy, all the features that you mentioned is something that L1 Stack offers today. And I think it's very lean and stack. So the cost of running Avalanche infrastructure is also very, very competitive as compared to other stacks in the market. So absolutely an amazing choice, a very solid ecosystem that supports the underlying tech. Now, on top of it, when we talk about trade finance. So I have worked with trade finance in the past before starting Zeeve as an infra player. And we realized that any enterprise system has got some core requirements, whether we talk about RWA, whether we talk about trade finance or supply chain traceability, etc. So there needs to be identity, there needs to be a proper decentralized data storage, there needs to be a privacy and compliances, data compliances specifically. So I see you have launched Water ID and Watermark, these two products, which is helping build the whole identity-backed trade finance. So a bit about these two products and how you are driving or revolutionizing the trade finance piece pertaining to a commodity space.
I love that we're going right to that, because it is, identity is the master citizen, the connective tissue in physical commodity flows. I need to know who I'm doing business with, and I need to know what that business entails. And we hear a lot about all the fraud and corruption and the consequences of regulatory rigor on crypto markets, I invite you to just Google oil trading, commodity trading, and fraud, and you will see the order of magnitude of regulatory rigor on commodity trading is significantly higher than what it is even in an industry like crypto, because there is so much value trading hands. And there are, yes, many people taking shortcuts, but also many people honestly getting caught up in things they didn't really understand they were getting caught up in. And as some of the largest industry players in the world, back when I sat in my enterprise seat at Shell, we were very aware of this dilemma of KYC and identity because it was essential. It was our license to operate as an industry. It was really old school and outdated the way we had to do it. There were so many bloated intermediaries who monetized our ability, to get private data from a potential counterpart, to then do the vetting and screening, and then get a red light, yellow light, or green light for doing business with them, and then do it all over again across the industry for the same counterpart, probably about 30, 40 times, and then do it all over again in a year. No one other than the intermediaries ever owning the data and never being able to reuse that. So, for example, if a Shell does KYC on counterparty Y and they find out that counterparty Y isn't someone you can do business with, there's no way that the next partner can just leverage that knowledge and ditch the 6 months of work and delay. And what's really wonderful about decentralized identity and the way you can manage that in a blockchain environment is all of the onus and ownership of that data management, that verification can become self sovereign. So a counterparty can own all of those data points, the verification, keeping it up to date, and that KYC AML can become transferable and interoperable across a whole ecosystem of doing business and financing. So water IDs are really about flipping that model. And I'm really privileged to work with my colleague Nitin Gavane, who I believe, and I think much of industry believes, is one of the leading creators and builders and designers and architects in decentralized identities for physical commodities. He is our CTO, and what I believe the team have created allows us to, just shorten the time, the burden, and the cost of actually knowing who you're doing business with, make that interoperable across the whole water ecosystem. So if you're a DApp team and you're onboarding and you want to be able to interface with all of the industry giants, what our Water ID stack does is it allows you to onboard once with many and to be able to be in an ecosystem of trusted counterparts without having to carry the burden of doing that. And for enterprise, it allows us to be able to leapfrog this KYC AML hurdle and to make it much cleaner, safer. And we also have a watermark, which really is at its essence a track and trace platform, but it's a true track and trace platform that we created with our partners, Rio Tinto, which is one of the world's largest mining companies, to be used with General Motors, one of the world's largest auto manufacturing companies, and every supply chain participant, from the time a piece of metal comes out of a mine and it's transported, it's, processed and becomes a hood of a car in a truck for General Motors. Our track and trace really follows the physical commodity and creates a decentralized, verified identity, a watermark, as it were, for that physical piece of metal. So it's not taking a piece of paper at inception, putting that on on a ledger, and then doing a mass balance and saying, well, here's your identity passport at the end of that value chain. It's really following the molecule so that counterparts know what they're buying and what its actual journey from origin to consumption has been. You marry those two as optional, so people opt in as optional connective tissue. You really have an environment in Web3 that, while being decentralized and fully open, mimics the regulatory requirements of the real world and really allows, like I said, builders, customers, partners, and financiers to go from off chain to on chain without being scared of what that really means.
Got it. No, I think it's a paradigm shift because, as we know, initially when initial blockchain-based systems were created in the enterprise space, KYC was just a layer. It was not enabling true decentralized identities. And today, when we talk about a complete on-chain tradability or supply chain traceability or provenance, I think having a decentralized identity combined with that makes a lot of difference, especially not just from the from securing the system or making it robust, but also enabling much better user experience. So I think it's a pretty solid. I know like Securitize did this for some of the RWA assets, like financial assets. But I think this is something amazing where you can create your identity. That identity can retain all the privacy, your access control, yet at the same time, other participants can use it based on consent. And then at the same time, whenever you are interacting with these smart contracts, you are interacting with any of the decentralized app, you don't need to go through the whole process, and you don't need to dip into a centralized KYC. You can actually use the verified credentials that are there as part of the contract. Moving further, I think the second problem that you're solving, which is even bigger, is managing the liquidity. So you talked about tokenization of some of the commodity reserves and how new commercial models or financial models you are designing to solve the liquidity challenges, make it very easy and enable this trade, and dismantling the existing opaque and fragmented systems. So a bit about Neo Reserves, your product, which is addressing the liquidity challenges.
Well, that's, I look at Water ID, watermarks, and the layer one as the core enabling infrastructure. You cannot do business in the real traded world if you don't know who you're working with and you don't know what business you're doing and you don't have the privacy rails. So for me, those are, it's sort of the moat to be able to participate in traded commodity worlds. And then you get to the step, the fun part, which is expanding trade. And I like to talk about expansion because the work we're doing and the parts of the value chain we are focusing on at Neo Reserve aren't occupied by incumbents or anyone else. These are really the areas of the traded value chain where traditional financing models and traditional pricing models and traditional um, identity models have left a massive gap because they cannot address it. And so for us, it's about expanding commodity financing. Trade finance is a very small niche, which is really about financing the journey of a cargo from production to consumption while it's on the seas and selling, the credit of that cargo to get some money. And you can sell your own credit as a trading house to get a bigger portfolio, but you're really financing trade. For us, it's about commodity financing as a much bigger pie that goes all the way, throughout the life cycle of a commodity and addresses some of the gaps that exist in price discovery, that exist in financing, that exist in identity. And I'm deliberately being vague here because the work we're doing is pretty cool, and we're still being very hush hush about it. But I guess what I can share here is for builders and financiers who are interested in tapping into that $113 trillion market of financializing the oil and copper markets. That's really where we are at with some of the largest participants in those markets and addressing gaps that TradFi has left instead of trying to compete with TradFi in a very small, narrow space of trade finance.
That
And
yep.
yeah. No, and all of the stuff around identity and verifiability of cargoes are core enablers of that, as is DeFi as a whole financial system for bringing new capital into traditional markets.
Absolutely. I think this sounds great. So I think,
Right.
Mariam, thanks a lot. I think you have covered a lot, and we are very excited to know about Water Protocol. So, since we are coming to the end of the session, I would like to know more about, what is the current roadmap, where Water Protocol is, and, how soon you can see, whether it be commodity professionals or financial institutions and other stakeholders in the commodity market, when they can they start interacting with Water Protocol and using it.
Well, yesterday with collaboration with your team and the wonderful set of engineers and enablers there, as well as Labs, we had our beta mainnet launch. And so all of our infrastructure and tech stack is now available and accessible in a POA format for anyone who wants to look more into what it looks like to participate and build on water. They should keep an eye on community.water.org or just go to water.org and navigate their way from there. We already have key enterprise partners who use our watermark tech in a private environment that will be transitioning to the mainnet, and leveraging our privacy protocols, which really means no one will be able to see the data of our industry partners, but the underlying technology and solution set will be available open source to other industry partners and other builders who want to build on it. The same with our Water ID protocols. And to get involved in the financing work we're doing and in the Neo Reserves work, that really is more of a commercial conversation with our commercial team at this stage. But we have folks really building a lot of solutions on their own, whether it's invoice financing or talent management using water IDs that we support and enable at Neo, which is our ecosystem development team. And that will sit alongside what we hope are many third-party applications leveraging those solutions, either sponsored by our enterprise partners or hopefully many created from the Web3 community.
Got it. No, I think that's amazing. And I would like to take a moment to thank you for partnering with Zeeve. I think we are very excited to partner with Water for managing the
Same here.
Avalanche Elman Infra. And I think this has been a very thought-provoking conversation. And thanks for sharing so generously about the commodity markets, what are the pressing challenges, and how Water is solving those challenges. It's a very enlightening, I would say. And I'm sure all the listeners who are listening to this podcast and will continue to listen to it, I think will gain a lot of value, especially taking an enterprise problem, using emerging tech like blockchain to solve it, amalgamate how the centralized system problems can be solved using decentralization, bringing some of the core components, yet retaining privacy, data compliances in place. I think this is a wonderful case study, and I think will inspire a lot of people who are looking at the DeFi and TradeFi kind of amalgamation in times to come. So thanks once again for joining us, and thank you. And we'll be more excited to host such webinars with you as you continue your journey with Watr. We would love to know more about how it is going, how the success is happening, and how different stakeholders are using the Watr protocol to solve these challenges. Thank you. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining.